Just recording. It's like a 360. I think, yeah, my but I turned on the spirit file. Cool. Welcome everyone to Systems Thinking Ontario. It's really nice to see some familiar faces and new faces. Yeah, so let's do some chair logistics. So what we'll do is we'll keep this pathway clear-ish, and let's see if we can collectively think of a system that's like modular. So people come, they grab a chair, and somehow the circle expands with the pillars. Maybe more like this area here. But we're pretty adaptive, all of us, so we'll figure it out. But if someone comes, they can grab a chair, they can kind of like come in. Yeah, so this is a larger group, which is awesome than usual. So thank you for like bearing the weather and coming out tonight on a Tuesday night. We're still trying to get the dates right because there's different classes and different sessions happening. We're in a different room today as well. But what we typically do as Sleeping Ontario is we actually introduce ourselves. We just go around the room for a couple of minutes, just say our name and say what brought us here tonight. Basically it. And then we'll have a conversation with some prompts for the two discussants. And then we'll just go into open conversation from there. So the circle is to facilitate that style of conversation. So if you're a speaker, if you're a discussant, I'll skip you and maybe you'll come at the end of your introduction. But I'm gonna arbitrarily select Dan, who was a speaker at our last in-person session, just to say his name and what brought you here tonight.
Hi, I'm Dan. I'm a historian and complexity scientist. I was brought here because you emailed me and I had a long day of writing.
Awesome, thank you for coming. Yeah, so your name and what brought you here tonight.
I'm also the advisor. I'm part of Generation that states for the integration and from Canada, but I'm also part of an advisory group for exchange. And I've been following it.
Cool. Awesome, thanks for coming.
Hi, I'm Sabana. I'm a research assistant here with Visual Communication Lab. And what brought me here is just I'm interested to hear more about this topic, especially about AI, since we're also integrating some projects, research projects. So I'm lots of good work.
Awesome, yeah, absolutely. We'll touch on that topic. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ned. Hi. Actually, I'm a graduate of the SFI program in Europe for the S Lab. I just happen to be in Toronto. I haven't been in Houston for many years. I'm just curious. I work for the United Nations headquarters, so there's some links. That's awesome.
I'm Florian. I am a user of various system theoretic stuff, and I got a note posted on Blue Sky yesterday, and it's not going to go outside.
Cool. Awesome. So we're just going around and introducing ourselves. We're just saying what our name is and what brought us here tonight. You picked the right seat at the right time. Name and what brought you here tonight.
Okay. So hi everyone, my name is Tamara Ariel Scala. You can just call me Tamara. I'm actually a graduate from Strategic Foresight and Innovation from my master's. So I'm familiar with systems thinking and also wanted to really apply it more in projects like we have in the future project that we have. I feel like I need to see the more practical applications of it, so I can actually see it more tangible rather than just theoretical application of systems. So that is really
Awesome. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Josh Brent. I am a software professional. I work in software, and I've always been interested in systems thinking. Yeah, I saw it somewhere on social media. Okay, this is a good opportunity for me to kind of join and see. So that's why.
So thank you for coming, Josh.
Hi, my name is Mike Boyd. My story is essentially identical, but I'm very interested in particularly the software policy budget and the intersection of systems and how those two things play together. Where's this now comes?
Awesome, cool.
Hi, I'm Erica. I guess as a systemic designer, I just did participate in RSD. I work across sectors, tech, nonprofit, government, healthcare, and I already work with the intersection with AI, tech, all of them, and really see a lack of governance or direction that I would, no, a lack of direction that I would like to see, and I work to influence the way that the direction is created and the system, right? So, and I know that sounds grandiose, but that's.
Great, thank you for coming.
My name is Ty. I worked in product and design, mostly on software and hardware as well. My wife actually kind of got me into like the invite and we're having a date night, so.
Yeah, now we're on the edge of our seat.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Toe. I have a colleague who's actually in the strategic foresight program right now, so she forwarded the invite details to my company. And so my company, we do technology consulting at the intersection of technology and philanthropy. And so the question around AI governance and how that will affect, well, all the industries, but I'm here specifically for philanthropy, so that's why. I'm here.
Which organization is this?
Grant book.
Grand Book.
So hi, I'm Nagar. I'm learning about systems studies and doing different events and heard about this with students. So,
Yeah, cool, nice to see you again after RSD.
yeah.
Hello, I am Yivka. I am a UX researcher, but I currently volunteer for Technologists for Democracy via Civic Tech Corona, and we're interested in tech policy, tech governance, excited to learn something new.
Hi everyone, my name is Akhil. I'm next climate tech entrepreneur and I now write and run courses about the meta crisis. And I was just talking to ChatGPT about who might be interested in something like that, so I can learn from others and it suggested this group, so. Yeah.
Bit of a paradox. We're trying to be noticed by. Okay, cool.
That's a deep street.
I am Roberto. My current SFI student is doing his MRP research, but I'm interested in all systems things, and really curious about the intersection of governance and systems, and how the two interact with each other.
Awesome.
Hello everyone, my name is Zach. I'm a systems enthusiast. My mom and Sam invited me to one of the meetings in the summer and I've been trying to show up since. It's my first one back, so good to see you by whatever we'll here.
I'm Roxana. I'm in the strategic foresight program currently, and I'm working on my major research project that has to do with worker well-being in context of rapid AI implementation, and so I'm interested in learning more about some of those concepts.
I'm David. I'm also in the product design and strategy. I'm here with my wife. Extended invitation. I'm starting to delve a little bit into the whole concept of the systems thinking. So it was really interesting group of people to someone enjoy.
Cool. My name is Zaid Khan. I'm the host of Systems Thinking Ontario and a co-organizer. I'm a graduate of the SFI program, like many of you here today. So that was my introduction to systems thinking, and I've been pursuing learning about it ever since. I'll say more about the topic later, but that's just a brief intro.
Hi everyone, my name is Sama. I'm also a graduate of the SFR program. Since 2022, I've been doing research at the intersection of urban planning and technology. So I'm curious to know what can technology governance do with that.
A little bit of a skip for holding the suspense.
Hi everyone, my name is Amy and I came in from Montreal because I saw Bianca on a LinkedIn post. And what brings me here, aside from that, is I'm also a patient partner with the Canadian Medical Association. And of course, I'm very interested in that intersection of AI, health equity, and climate change.
Cool, welcome from Montreal. Thank you for coming out.
Hi, my name is Rena. I'm a current graduate student in OCAP. I'm not from SFI, I'm from digital features.
Oh.
And I had the honor to meet David actually last week. And then he introduced me to systemic thinking, which I currently have no idea about, but I'm interested in learning. And also about governance, AI, because I feel like all the tools, digital tools that we are using, the open source community is so important to us, and current AI environment is not something that we want to see like further development on that direction. So I'm interested in learning more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Another Jennifer Bartholomew. I have had data privacy responsibilities for over a decade. I'm an IT director. Currently, the data governance and AI governance mandates fall under my mandate at a large charity firm. I'm currently an IT director, and I'm a certified information privacy technologist, which is an area that's going to have to ramp up a little bit on AI as well.
Yeah. Welcome.
I'm David Ng, with Peter Jones and some other people started System Thinking Ontario in 2012. So this is what 136th meeting.
Yeah.
So we haven't found a reason to stop having the meetings, so we're continuing to have the meetings. As of May, I was appointed on to as adjunct faculty at OCAD, so I'm hanging around. I try to not teach, I do research. Before this, 28 years at IBM. Good friends with the at IBM Research. Jim Sporer was the director of OpenAI for IBM. He wrote the foreword for my book.
Cool. Do a little skip for a second. Would you like to introduce yourself? We're just saying our name and what brought us here tonight.
Today, I do a lot of product management things in Toronto. I'm a product management consultant, helping organizations actually make sense. So from like a systems view of how human beings actually work together and strategy and whatnot. What brought me here is I don't really believe in the concept of tech governance because I've never seen it. So I'm curious to see what you have to say.
And there's an edit, I think, on the title that I should like think about. Governance or governance, not tech. But before we back a little bit, 1 second, yeah, like so to the right of Dan, why don't Dan you scooch to the right, zoom in as well, and everyone will move in a little bit. Even if it has a ripple effect, we'll do the wave basically, but with the chairs. You know, look down, and then we'll just leave that area. I'll do something you want to.
My name is Gertie and I'm a student, and I'm here because I'm interested in tech and governance. And I've read a bit about Caesar research, so I'm saying very awesome.
And lastly, yourself, I'll just say your name and what brought you here tonight. Yeah.
Hey, everyone. Hey, I'm Stephen Baldwin, the Director of Digital Product at Nine, to the fellow organization for the charitable sector in Canada. I'm also on the advisory council for Canadian Center for Nonprofit Digital Resilience. So I know it's a mouthful, Cinder. I'm just interested in both tech governance and systems thinking, and honestly, haven't done many events where talked about the two together. That do things kind of extremely like.
Yeah, awesome. So just on chair logistics, Pakpan and Yanya and others, maybe we can actually bring, like, there's a spot or two here. It's an amorphous circle where like shuffling around. Yeah, one more there, like that's. I think that's, yeah. Let's get there. You know what?
I know that feeling.
We're on the cusp of getting into it, but let's be thorough with introductions.
Oh, yeah.
Kenya, while you're here live, go for it. What's your name and what brought you here?
My name is Evgenia, full group today, wow, lots of people, sorry to be late. I'm a consultant, and I kind of utilize system, like, or complexity in my work.
Okay, awesome. Next detection is yourself. You already introduced her.
No, I did not. I came late. Hi, I'm Srini. I I think I saw systems thinking and tech governance both seemed interesting. I'm a big fan of Bianca, so I'm sure that this will be something good. That's about it.
At Con, I do work in civic tech stuff and collective intelligence. I'm really interested in depolarization. Or some tools around that have been used in citizen assembly processes lately. Yeah, that's me.
And then yourself?
I'm Curtis, analyst, critical systems, heuristics, soft systems thinking, whatever.
Nice to see you, Chris.
Thanks.
I'm Delaney, I'm a public servant, I'm interested in sustainability and governance and. Hi, Chris, let me know what I'm saying.
Awesome. Okay, so last logistic work space before, do we want to move the tables out? That way you guys push back, would that be reasonable? Sure. Should we do that? Okay, a quick logistics break and then we'll.
It's me, it's Steve's, not you. All. That.
Different kind of passes.
Okay, awesome. So, thank you all for the introductions. We'll get to this two discussants in a second, but this is a series where we talk about what I thought was about systems thinking often has a insular way of talking to itself. So this series, like what can systems thinkers learn from, and then we kind of bring in a topic from the outside world, well, not from the outside world, but from a different domain that has relationships to systems. So this one is on tech governance. Whether that's the right term, I don't know, governance of tech governance, governance technology, I don't know, but that's the point of it. And so I'm gonna let the two discussants introduce themselves, and maybe so Lynn and Bianca, you can just maybe share a little bit about your backgrounds and how you're coming into this topic, and then I'll throw up an opening prompt, but after that, we'll just organically unfold into a conversation. So Lynn, why don't you start us off?
Hi, I'm Sule. So I'm also a recent graduate from SFY. The questions about why am I interested in tech governance? So my project is about technology assessment, and I have to say, why am I interested in technology assessment and what is technology assessment? So I am from Myanmar, and some of you might have already know. We, like, our country has been under civil war for so long and the military for so long, but we did have a chance in 2015. The civilian regimes coming in, and we're so hopeful that there would be some improvement, but it just changed like very quickly. And because of the major negative impact of technology. So since then, I'm so interested in technology. My background is a public policy. I have a master in public administration, but the policy issues that I'm interested in is a technology policy. So when I started thinking about my media research project, I was thinking like, what do I want to do? And I was thinking, whenever we actually is trying to create some new technology, the way that we have to treat it is that, okay, it just something came up, that is something inevitable. How about we let it out in the world and tested it and then see what happened? And then only after that, we would take some actions about that. And I think it's insane. I think it doesn't make sense. So when we have like food and drugs, when we have all of this negative impact, we have to have some sort of an assessment to go through before it's reached public. But then for the technologies, it doesn't have anything. So
that's why I'm interested in knowledge assessment and, this is how it is. With this.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue. Yeah, Bianca, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and what brings you into this topic?
Okay, so I feel like I'm doing a bit of an exit interview with the tech governance space, so this is good timing, and anything I say, it's not a personal critique of your field or what you're working on, but I am looking a lot at what I've done in the last 10 years and wondering like, what was that about? So I'm here at so the chapters to date are like, drop out of university, have a cliched startup, fail miserably, need to get a job, move home with my mom, need to get a job. And I worked in the tech sector because I needed a job, not because I was educated for it. I just needed a job. So I worked at a startup in Toronto that had 30 people. It got bought by Thomson Reuters. And then I worked at a multinational tech company. So that's like chapter 1. Okay. Chapter 2 was running public meetings. So I would stand in a room like this and say, I have no vested interest in the outcome of tonight's meeting. I was a process expert. The pathway there was interesting to me, but complete facilitation work. That was it for city governments, mostly government agencies. So totally neutral party, really interested in civic engagement and democracy. The third chapter, which I'm winding down now, is sort of the two coming together, was thinking about technology and its impact on democracy, civic engagement, liberal democracy in particular. So this has been 10 years of accidental falling into like policy advice, advocacy, organizing work, testifying at, like the federal whatever committee because Arrive Can was a shenanigan, for example. And ending in the last few years, I've made money from American philanthropy. So the Ford Foundation, we run a small National Science Foundation grant to look at the use of AI in professions where people have fiduciary responsibilities, like law and medicine. So I've been running a course, one in Arizona State University and one in the Icon School of Medicine in New York, to teach about tech, work with a fellow or two on a project, and then try to triangulate with like the American Bar Association, the American Medical Association, and the state and local versions of those to say, this is your problem. This is your problem. This isn't just the public's problem. But now, and I will share some reflections on tech governance, digital governance, everything else. I don't want to work at that scale anymore. I think the abstraction level is too much for me. I don't like it. I like proper nouns. I like grounding. I love talking at this size and scale, and I love that working in the city. So I'm starting a new chapter, and I'm figuring out exactly what that looks like. But I'm trying to work on small projects with a small number of people with the humility of like practical implementation of these things, because right now there's very little accountability for people that work in policy writ large, and particularly in technology governance. It's a lot of up here. AI broke me, and I thought I was done with the English language with AI, like it meant nothing anymore. And then came digital sovereignty. So these things are unwieldy and unruly, and I've shared thoughts in conversation, but that's where I am now.
Okay, awesome. Well, a lot to unpack there. So any prompt I give you both, feel free to edit the prompt or answer as you wish, as if you're a politician. I'll just answer the question differently. But you're not a politician, you're better than that, I understand. So, Sylvan, I love what you write here about decisions about technological choices are social choices. And Bianca, you write, technology decisions are operations decisions. So I'm just gonna get right into the meat of it. Do either of you want to comment on each other or unpack that further about what is the nexus, what is the heart, what is the idea behind those statements?
Yeah, I think I can continue my story about the technology assessment. So I was interested in that concept, what is it? And I was very lucky to found Peter Jones as my supervisor. And luckily, his mentor is Alessandro Cristotti, who is also pioneers in system design and also pioneers in technology assessments. What coincidence! So I go follow his literatures and all the work that he has done. And like before initially, what I was thinking is, all of these new technologies going out there without having safeguards and anything, that is insane. There should be some assessments involved. But then the more I dig into, the more I read about, different literature, particularly from him, what they were suggesting is that the technologies has become so complex and it's become touching to the social fabric, our society, the way that we have functions, it has been touched by the technologies. We have changed, the behavior of societies have changed. So why all of these new technologies are still decided and provided just by the small group of people? It should be, so we are thinking more of these technologies as something that we can always take advantage of. And we think it more as a tool, and we think it's some advantage that we can think. And then only after that, when something happens, we gonna take action. That is such a reactionary approach. And that is not working anymore. We need to have a parallel process ongoing where when the new technologies are developing, there should be the involvement of the people shaping the entire development process from their perspective. Now, even if you're thinking from AI, so we are thinking of AI to become a social agent. And that's what something only people will be able to do. So people have their own lived experience, and they are the ones who actually know how to navigate this technology itself. So instead of just having small people trying something new and then letting it out, why don't we do as a socio-political process? And not thinking technology as something, a tool, it should be a process. It is something that people can choose and people can also think about what's going to be the consequences of this technology. So that is what I mean by social choice, and that is also what they have actually proposed in 1972, and that is like a long time ago, but then it's never realized just because the way that we approach technology is no longer that safeguarding or anything. We are going more toward marginalizations and we are going more toward productivity. So they put into that.
Yeah. So in response to what you wrote, I think technology is more of a cultural issue and that we're chasing it with legalistic, rational policy, standards, compliance. And yet, if AI was heavily regulated, are we resolving the crisis of how people are looking at creativity, thinking? If AI was regulated right now, the idea is that if it's high risk, it gets regulated. But what's happening in K-12? What's happening in universities? Would it matter if it was regulated? Probably not. So I think there's a major, that's like what rhymes with what you were saying, a major cultural thing that as we're all distracted with the safety risk frame, all of the cultural consequence doesn't have a place to get discussed. And I like two thoughts on that in particular. Wendell Berry, I don't know if anyone's familiar with his writing. In the year 2000, he wrote, I can imagine a time in the not too distant future where some people will want to live like creatures and some people will want to live like machines. And that is not a one is right or one is wrong. That is a frame that I know lots of people who I share values with and they want to live like machines. That's happening right now. So this is a cultural question of what do you want your society to look like? It will not be resolved by regulation. It will not be resolved by NIST standard 2732, like to the point of that. And then I think the other comment is that so long as we live in a militarized world, here we are at Remembrance Day, the technology is inevitable. It is going to keep rolling off the assembly lines. So it is inevitable, but our use is where we have agency. And that's where it comes back to the operations decision. Is it there? Yes. But the agency and the power to me is around the decisions we make to use it. I think it is a fatal error to fall into the frame of the product. Because once you're in there, then you're doing standards, you're doing this, ethical AI, all these things. AI cannot be ethical. They say these are two words don't go together. The use can have considerations of ethics, but the product cannot be ethical or responsible or safe. None of these words make sense. So to me, we have to be very careful that we stay around the technology in our conversations. But the encouragement from a highly rational society is to go into the technology. And there's a massive political economy around going into the technology, right? And those patterns are there and everyone knows how to do it. And you pay the consulting company to say you're compliant with the standard and but the world rolls on. So I think we have to pull ourselves outside of the tech and into the use, and that's where our power lies. And that's, yeah, like where I think we should look.
So there's a shared theme here between, like, Susan, you described it as a process, like the inclusion of the people and how the technology works, it's a process, and Bianca, you described it as a cultural way in, and which is why the policy instrument sometimes is not adequate for that. Just to give you a fun opportunity to critique that, what are some of the blind spots of using the legal and policy framing for the management, for the regulation of technology?
Yeah. So I would say, my colleague Sean has a saying that I love, and it's like, we are not in an era of knowledge problems, we're in an era of incentives problems. So, to your point, I've never seen tech governance actually reckon with power. I've seen it perform, I've seen it listen, I've seen it, like the AI consultations that I have attended. There was no proper noun, there was no one there that even used the tooling. There wasn't really a question about whether you could regulate mathematics, which I think, to be specific, we have like the three, Dorian is a great teacher for this, but we have like good old fashioned AI, which is really statistics. We have generative AI, which is our ChatGPT and replication machine stuff. And then we have AGI, which we can have debates about, artificial general intelligence. I don't think it's a thing. But it is being used as an idea to cover up the specific conversations we need to have about the use of the first two categories. So the danger with the category is you never actually get into the application or the use. And so you kind of keep repeating the siloed thinking, and you never stop and say, should we be doing this at all? You get into, I would say, privacy is a great one, where as long as it's privacy preserving, it's fine. And sometimes, no, it's not fine. You shouldn't be doing this at all. Whether or not it's privacy preserving, it's bad for us. So these are some of the issues that emerge, especially safety. Like, safety has been used in Canada in a very unequal and to further inequity. So who's being kept safe, who isn't, how does that, framework look? So
you're imposing artificial boundaries on the framing of it in order to avoid critical, like, upstream questions about ethics and should we, in order to pay attention toward the management of it as a presupposition. You already believe it's gonna be used in X, Y, Z ways.
And one piece of important history is in the year 2000, Canada put forward the rules, like we have two federal privacy laws. One of them protects your data that the government holds. One of them protects data held in the corporate sector. That invention of data as an asset, we're replicating it, because data is not a real thing. It's not a thing that you can, it's a financial product. It's not actually a thing. It's a proxy for a whole bunch of other things. And I think we can all tell we've had 25 years of data protection privacy. It works. It's something. But it's not like, look how much has happened under those regimes, because if they're not contextual, they're just like, are we doing this? Are we doing that? And I just want to share something a woman named Brenda McPhail shared with me about AI, because I heard a lot of interest in AI. When we regulated privacy, we could all look at the idea of privacy. We can agree and disagree, but we know what we're arcing at. Right now, when we say we're regulating AI, what? We're regulating it to do what? We're regulating it into existence is what we're doing. We're inventing it as a product, and the entire purpose of the corporate data invention was so data could flow internationally as a market. So all of this regulatory conversation is to make sure that you can sell AI here, and you can sell it in Europe, and you can sell it in Australia, and you can sell, that's why we're regulated. we are not regulating to protect each other, and if we are, it's second order to economic development. So this is like a highly commercial point in time for AI as a governance, again, I'm with you, you know, as an exercise. So that's another problem set of this.
I wanna add just a little bit on that, just because the regulations is that can be quite rigid, and one of the technologies is keep on innovating and inventing. The regulations come like catching up, and it doesn't really make sense for us to regulate at one point. So what it's good for us, I feel like it's more of a measures where that can be part of what that context for that community like the choice. So for example, like you said, the country of Canada might probably try certain type of technology, but it might potentially not be the same for the country like mine.
Right.
Or it might probably not be the same for any other countries because their context and their background is very different. So in that sense, we should have just a process that could actually fall into democratizations of technology. So that is the process that we should actually encourage, rather than just going with the regulations, do this and that, and it's actually not gonna work.
Yeah, but it's also the rights. So one of my favorite things that Jordan Peterson also said, I'm not a fan of Jordan Peterson, but talks about the fact that we talk a lot about rights and we talk very little about responsibilities. Because the rights-based regimes, I think we've run our course on a lot of them at this point in time. And so you kind of have to shift because we have human rights, we have charters. And so this is where I feel like uncertain about creating tech anything, is that we have charters. And if you look at the US, they wrote a digital charter, but if you look in the fine print, it's like, it's not actually a charter. We had the same thing, that was what we did here. They had an AI Bill of Rights with the US one. Canada did a digital charter, but those actually aren't rights. They're not rights that would be standing in a court of law. So we're kind of like rhetorically thinking about tech policy, but when it hits, you know, one of the questions is, if you kill someone, does it matter what you did it with? There's a harms-based approach, which is a different one, which is another legal approach that some people prefer to think about. Because I really do want to be honest about the question. I don't know that tech policy, like, look, it's only been 30 years since the internet. I'm not actually sure it's a good idea. I think it's plausible to say we'd be better off saying, how do we do good transportation? How do we do good climate? How do we do good education? And figure out how we contextually manage these things in operations and practice. Like that, to me, at least should be on the table right now, because it's only been 30 years. And I don't think the track record of tech regulation is great.
Right. Okay, with that said, because there's so many of us and a lot of ideas, like honestly, open floor. So let's just get into it. If you have questions, ideas, thoughts, you want to contribute to the conversation. Let's go. Curtis, you look like you're already ready to rock.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could give your opinions on like moving beyond like talking about risk and reacting, and like more on your opinions on like creating or negotiating or deliberating on purpose, or whatever goal that you're leading the design system.
Yeah, I was actually doing this technology assessments and trying to understand what is it for Canada, and the approach is participatory. And the second part of my project is to develop the process which everybody can engage, is somewhat like a mechanism. So where people can, so I also tested as a prototype where people can engage through the storytelling, how they can actually want a technology for them, whether that technology is right for them, whether that technology is not something that they wouldn't want. There could be potentially negative side effects for these technologies, and I wouldn't want this particular technology company to actually not go into that direction. So the thing that I have a prototype is using AI as voice development, and which it's being quite popular these days. So there are like really good responses from people. Like people are actually saying that, you know, these AI girlfriends and boyfriends would actually give you only what you want to hear, and you will be living in a bubble, and that's something that you will have to think about. That what you think of is something that you think it will be always good because they will be encouraging the AI, but then you will have to understand that whenever you're hearing something that is good for you might not necessarily be actually good. So that responses, they are really good. So people are quite willing to engage. So for me, I think that is not happening yet, and it's also bizarre. People are quite willing to engage, and there are no mechanism, no process at the moment. I know, like Canada, in a way, has a good political culture of a consultation, whether it is box ticking or whatever. But still, there is a consultation process is ongoing, but then it's not necessarily something that is parallel with the technology development. So whenever you are trying to think of an application, for example, if we are thinking of using AI in a health center, for example, people would be worried, like, would I really want to trust my health to an AI? And to a machine. So that kind of question should not be answered by anybody but people. So there should be a mechanism, there should be a process that could actually allow them to engage in their own capacity. So that's what I was developing at the moment. And there should be more. I think in that kind of process, that kind of mechanism should be out there by
A few things. Has anyone heard of the book called The AI Con by Alex Hanna and Emily Bender? Yeah. I think a helpful thing they do in this book, one is a sociologist, one is a linguist, is think about rather than AI, think about automation. Because at automation, you think about decisions, you think about relationships, and you think, what do you want to have a person in a relationship to, like, where do you want to participate in the thing? And where not? Because of course, there's gonna be uses that make sense. There's gonna be automation that you would agree with, but you also have to be very careful, like large language models, they do a great job describing this. They're not thinking, they're pattern matching. So that's not conscious thought, that is not decision making. It sounds like it, but it's not. They call them synthetic text extrusion machines. Because they're pulling patterns from very large bodies of data, but they are not conscious. So I'm saying this because we want to protect where we're careful, and especially in relationships, inefficient with each other. Because this goes back to responsibilities, like the hard conversations are often what we need to grow, what we need to hear, that you need to be challenged. So I think thinking this is the creatures machines thing is that we're in a really dangerous point, because the convenience culture that a lot of this can enable, it goes hand in hand with compliance to authoritarianism. Because we don't practice being uncomfortable when everything is very easy. And you have to be ready to be uncomfortable when you've got someone coming at you in an authoritarian frame. You cannot freeze and be like, oh God, I don't know, what am I gonna get in trouble, da, da, da. You have to practice this every day, being uncomfortable. I don't like it, but it's true. And so I think to go to the purpose of like, thinking about it less in those frames and more in the places of like, where do we want to use this? Where, like, how is this helpful to us? We can't start with technology. We always have to go back to like, what are we actually trying to do here? And then is there something beneficial to bring in from what's on offer? We also have to remember that the economic development, last point, democracy, I'm protective of this. I had it out, the guy from Microsoft. You cannot democratize privately held assets. We don't own, there's no sovereign AI, we're trillions in infrastructure. These are a very small number of companies. You're not their product manager. They're not coming to you, and the government can consult with you, and then what? Go tell Google what to do? Google doesn't care. There's no contract between Google or OpenAI or anyone's government. So you can't say democratize. You can have engagement on the policy and the regulatory piece, but who's enforcing it? And this is my question for the systems people, because there's a lot of unaccountable policy and legal development. It's easy to write laws. It takes 10 years sometimes to see justice served when there's a problem. So to me, these frameworks aren't functioning properly to the actual thing that's in front of us. And it's hard for me, and that's also why I'm happy to go more toward culture, because I'm a big democracy person, but I'll tell you, public engagement, as someone who's run public meetings, if I were to try to run a public engagement on AI, I don't know, man, like that's tough, because the government will never frame it as a labor extraction system, which is what it is primarily. It's being used, it doesn't have to work well to get deployed. So, yeah.
I have separation between artificial intelligence and automation and intelligence augmentation, so IA as opposed to AI.
Right.
And so those have been in my class. So in last year, we wrote this thinking class, and the question I asked Stephen, the instructor, was, okay, we can either ignore AI or we can bring it in. And so we brought it in as experiment in the first year, and I'm rewriting again. And it'll be interesting to see the rewrites, and I'm actually restructuring the course differently. But that specifically for me is the intelligence augmentation thing, which is we have students at the master's level.
Yeah.
We have these new tools, and we have to work with them differently. So it's part of the extension of system thinking being wrote in the 1980s. The way that we approached it in the 1980s, like teaching them that, like teach a causal loop diagram, but maybe you should think about causal loop diagrams a different way when you have an AI around that would help you or criticize you or approach it a different way. So when we're talking about regulation is really on the automation part. They haven't done program to do the intelligence augmentation.
I agree. I'd like to talk about philosophy more in our culture. Like, I think that's why I get scared how little we do that, you know. I think we have philosophical, cultural question. We're in moral emergencies right now. I don't really think we're in intellectual. I don't really think we're missing. This is where, frankly, being critical of myself is I think tech governance and I don't know, I can't say it about systems, but it's almost like evading the problem instead of addressing the problem. And I think all of these things. So in my life, like working in open government, procurement, novel technologies, if your foundations are solid, if everyone's provided for, if everyone has housing and food and the climate's good to go and we're solid down there, you can adapt, you can do a lot of cool shit up here. But when this isn't solid, these systems accelerate injustice. They just do, they always have. So I think it's a little bit of a moral question is, do we get to dabble in the last mile when the foundation is completely rotting? I don't know. And I'm not saying there aren't small gains up there. There are. I've worked on them. I believe in them too, but I'm not sure that like we have to get better at doing both at once, I think. I don't know. That's just.
So let me, so I just tried something this morning. It was a really interesting problem. So I was working on a workshop last week, and so I ended up with a 8,000 character prompt.
Oh, God.
Yeah. That's what I said when they saw it. So people that saw this, they're going, oh my God. But for me, it was a faster way to compress the content. And what happened was that the standard for OCAD is supposed to use a Microsoft Copilot. That's a 5,000 character limit.
Wow.
And so it's like, I can't do that. And so I've been using Qwen, which is the Alibaba Chinese version, which is open source, and did it no problem. And Perplexity did it no problem. And I was thinking just this morning, I thought, you know, I've actually been trying a Canadian AI engine. So I tried Cohere, 2,500 character limit. Now, who am I supposed to come to in the Canadian government to say, I'm teaching graduate students, and I have to use the Chinese AI because you're not providing the resources to actually do that?
Yeah, I said, the innovation, science, economic development people, they'll love to talk about that. I'm serious, I think we have a minister of AI and we're taking that seriously. I'm like, that is not a serious, to me, this is not a serious, democratic thought. So I'm turning into like.
Yeah, I just want to continue around what would it look like to not have tech policy, because I agree with a lot of the discussions happening here. I see this happen. I used to organize migrant farm workers, right? Try to find laws that exist. I've got lobby, doesn't work. The only thing that works is the concrete organizing of people to ensure that they get what they need. So I'm seeing that not happen right now. In my school, my daughter has access to all these devices. No one is really overseeing that. The principal won't answer. The TDSB has been taken, Trend which is the school board, those of you who are parents in Dublin and Toronto, has been taken over by the province. It's already happening. I see and I feel it. I'm right. You know, that what is happening in the US is already happening.
Oh, yeah.
I went to a talk yesterday, the Jeffrey Hinton lecture. Elaine Evans talk about all the AI, and I was like, hoping to, like, not, find hope, because I'm not hoping to find hope. And I came away and I was like, gross, right? We're still, this was an AI safety talk.
Yeah.
And it was like next level gross. It was next level gross, like. And I think we need to talk concretely about what is next, because we're not talking about what it's for. What is it that we want in our society? Our budget just delivered us a military tech. That was one of the resounding messages. Military tech. We're gonna go all in on digital and military. We wanna kill, and we want you to have the tools to do so. I mean, that's basically, there's a lot of other stuff I know, but that is the resounding message.
Yeah.
We are not, we have to talk about the use.
Yeah.
What is it that we actually want? I think people are struggling to even articulate that. As someone who has always been articulating what I'm finding, what I want in a society, and been a grassroots organizer, worked in tech, worked in government, worked in policy. Policy is very divided from program. Why is that? We're in a new era. I don't think there is a division between policy and program.
Yeah.
But we implement, we're now creating, because things are moving so fast because of AI, right? We need to talk about the concrete again. And how does that look? So where is it? What we talk about, what is the next step beyond tech policy, so that policy people aren't left behind and program people aren't behind. Everyone's skills are useful in this moment. We just have to figure out in thinking about the idea, I think it was Disney that has a chief collaboration officer for AI. I love the idea of not, I feel like to do this because whatever, but the chief collaboration officer, that space, like people that bring people together, because people don't work across lines, right? And that's what we do need at this point. So I'll just go with that.
Yeah.
I might not, I might not necessarily be answering your questions where exactly.
It's not a question.
Yeah.
It's
It just taught me something in my brain, and I just want to share with everybody, just because I feel like right now is a good time for us to start thinking about that question, and where it's gonna go, and with the application. Because I think in technologies, all these new technologies have a different process, right? So start with the enthusiastic stage and then adoptions and all. I think at the moment, all of these tech companies or whatever, the industries is trying to push into the next incremental model. What is the small improvement that they can make? That is what they are targeting at the moment. But then that is just a like small percentage of technology companies can actually do, but the next stage is what is really important. That is the adoption stage. Like regardless of whatever we are saying, AI is out there, we are thinking about that. And then there will be businesses that will be using the AI, and there will be large businesses or small businesses, they will start adopting it. And then they will actually be using in every use cases, all of these applications. So when it's come to that adoption stage, then there should be something that would make sure these adoptions are something that we can accept. Right? So it might not necessarily be something, what is it? But it's like we are in the right time to start this conversation. We're in, to start doing something about it for the application. Sorry about that.
Just back and forth, like you can vote, like they have one and then two.
Yeah.
Like,
Two quick points. One of them is, I've always liked that in Canada, we have two separate laws, because in Europe, you have data protection and data is data is data is data. And at this point in history, what I can tell you is if you look at tech adoption in the private sector, has anyone here had like to try to call a hotel once you book something, you need to try to talk to somebody at the hotel where you're staying? No, you can't get that person on the phone anymore. And there's no redress, and we still book the hotel. So the problem is, even when the technology is shit, the private sector can adopt it, and if we're willing to do, like, just still be okay, whatever, they will, right? And so they will remove the labor from the equation. We as consumers have seen this over and over and over again, automated phone systems where you can't even press 0 anymore. Like, it's like, you're out, you go to the website. That's a private sector realm. The public sector cannot do that to us. So to me, one division of thinking about use, because for rights and equity and the public service and the ethics, they're trying to use it, chat GPT, chat, whatever, they're developing their own, chatbot for the CRA. Canada will do a couple of little cases where they can do the pony show out to say, look at us, we're making AI. But for the most part, they can't use it as indiscriminately in the public sector. So I think we need to really hold on to and protect the public sector. Everything that's public sector application is a better battleground, so to speak, or surface area to watch. The second thing to say about the use, I spoke to a lawyer. This is a very good learning moment for me in the United States, public defender, barred lawyer. I would assume we have shared values. And he said to me, I would rather someone had a chatbot that was wrong sometimes than not have a lawyer. That's the problem with this stage we're in with underfunding services, is that if we go from this stage of underfunded to automated, big trouble, because it is very difficult to refund those services. So education, healthcare, legal provision, nonprofit sector, you know this, like, so I just think if we think about ways to try to prioritize where the attention goes, I think the private sector, if it's a unionized private sector domain, unions can fight. But in Canada, the public sector unions, they work in the way to say, tell us what the tech is and train us. That's the defense that has come from the assembly line. They are not saying we want a collective bargain on how we use this stuff, which I wish we would see, but that's not happening. That could be happening in unions. These are just some suggestions and some realities about in the use. Like, I was shocked to hear a lawyer say that. I was like, wow, you're barred. That's your profession. And you're okay with it going wrong. That's how bad it is, right? So.
We have 5 questions on that. 1, 2, Curtis, were you 3? Or sorry, not Curtis, but Myat, were you 4? You're 4, so 3, 4, 5. So you can either like respond or you can just, if the conversation continues, that's fine.
And if there are comments.
Yeah, if there are comments, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this is more of a commentary than a picture.
Sure. Yeah.
And just like trying to verbalize everything in a simplistic manner as much as I can, but I was just thinking about how this kind of really shows how broken our system's feedback loop is. I broken because obviously it's designed that way, right? Like people who benefit from it. But a lady over there just left and she was talking about how we should have these conversations. The really funny thing for me about that is that we've had these conversations before, even before it has been launched, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people do futures thinking, foresight. There's a lot of like sci-fi stories or narratives out there where we have seen these kinds of effects, and they're all mostly negative. Thinking about how people are going to turn to machines, are going to be dependent on machines, and all of that. So there were just so many warnings, and like when generative AI just like started, there were a lot of conversations about its negative effects. Those conversations did not transform into regulations or policy or anything like that, because the system doesn't really like design those critical and thoughtful discussions to be something that's going to actually empower the system to help the people who are going to be most affected, right? Because the people or the institutions that benefit from AI incentivize a lot of us to actually use AI, right? So even researchers maybe talking about AI, maybe use ChatGPT even to like do their research. No artist would want to use AI because it would replace them, but a lot of non-artists who want to do art try to use ChatGPT or sorry, not ChatGPT, but like AI to basically do their art. So, and these are the people who are listened to. These are the people who try to proliferate that idea and over and over again. And there is no incentive basically for most of us, aside from morally or ethically or environmentally as well, like critical, because there's more incentive to outsource your thinking, because the culture, as was spoken about before, the culture is trying to give output of perfection in the fastest way possible, and that is what is incentivized. Being able to produce essays or outputs that are like really, really high quality in like a span of like 1 minute or less, that is what's incentivized, is what's being, and so we benefit from using it actually. So I think not using it and actually actively going against it is actually even harder to the resistance. Yeah. And that's a very, very active choice to be able to do that. So I think that is a discussion we had, pushing beyond those discussions and making sure it's really creating a space where it cannot be ignored is the bigger problem.
Yeah.
I just want to add to that.
Yeah.
So I think one thing that I've been noticing is that
measurement was a way to evaluate our capability. But now we are trying to fit our capability to match the measurement, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's essentially the problem. I mean, it's like progress became the goal. So, but progress should have been the consequence of whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think we have to flip that, and I agree with you that discomfort is where growth lies, and how do we do discomfort at scale? I mean, if there is any idea, right, I think
Yeah.
that's essentially what we need to figure out.
Yeah, I love that. Let's go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of wanted to build off that, but I know there's another question.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Go ahead as a quick build.
I'll keep this quick, but I've often thought about it as, to your point, of culture, of have we hit our edge at the ability to discuss things? In the skill of AI. So like, I try not to actually call it AI, I try to call an LLM an LLM.
Yeah.
And people look at me weird,
Yeah.
just like when I call my coffee like plain, not black, but like plain. Seriously, it does have implications,
Yeah.
and even right down to, there's some research that just came out about language and understanding of math.
Yeah.
Right, and understanding of probabilistic thinking. David, you'll appreciate this. So Chinese has a perfect way of, well, Mandarin specifically, just to be specific, has a perfect way of discussing base 10 math.
Okay.
Right? As opposed to like 12. Why don't we call it 10^2, right? 10^2, as opposed to 12. Now, the reason why this matters is because when you make it simple for people to understand, they're able to engage, kids are able to engage and learn mathematics faster than, for example, in French. You know, father vein, what? Sorry, that was a joke, but at the same time, it has real world implications. So I'm wondering if we're at the edge philosophically of the language of culture to be able to impose friction into systems at a particular scale that we're able to talk about.
So let's get the second question in, then we'll do 2 prompts, and then we'll start making a soup out of the.
We talked very briefly about the idea of discussing philosophy or having a philosophical basis. When I'm a big fan of not just like there's freedom to do things. So we might consider freedom from the possibility of. And specifically, I'm interested when we're talking about regulation, something that has been true in software since the earliest software licenses, but nobody else is allowed to get away with, is provided as is. With no quality or warranty. Like if you read the MIT license, the BSc license, all these things, they've got text in them that says, if it breaks, you can keep both pieces.
Yeah.
Right? And nobody else in no other major industry, I think computing has managed to get away with avoiding the framework specifically that would give rise to effective regulation. And that's liability.
Yeah.
And specifically, like if you go and look at Transport Canada's documentation about testing tires, like they have a phone book. That is exactly, and it goes into extreme detail about under what conditions specifically, under what circumstances, at what speeds, and so on specifically. You as the driver of the vehicle need to be free from the possibility of these specific kinds of harm and risk of harm. And if you don't meet those things, you can't sell that product with maintenance. The same is true of hockey helmets, right? Like you can't buy a hockey helmet that cannot take 140-mile-an-hour slash shot. Pardon me, longer hours. For the specific reasons. And so, but contrary to, I think, some of the I think that there is a path here towards regulation, not in, as you described, not high level sort of abstract sense, but in the very real sense of people under this regulatory regime need to be free from these specific kinds of harm. And you can demonstrate that your product meets that you don't get to sell it. So I think that there's an alternate approach to this that is not fiduciary or sort of, or moral. Not ethical or moral in its regulatory framing. But it's a very, very practical sort of, definite. If it was a regulated case that say this software not only has to demonstrate that it doesn't have to discriminate on the basis of race.
Yeah.
But like that you need to prove that in a lab. Then we probably have different conversations.
Yeah.
Like, you have to prove that this LLM will not try to convince a teenager to do themselves. I think that there are paths towards making these tools safe that don't necessarily involve like abstract principles, but instead involve real world consequences for the people selling what they create.
I want to add a little bit into that just because it might probably also open up another discussion, so although it might probably be difficult. Because in the past, they do have, in Canada, there is a council called Science Council, and the other ones is actually do assessments for all these new technologies, and they were quite vocal about it. But then they have been named as an interventionist, and they were actually like shut down. The entire operations have been shut down just because we are going to go for the commercialization. And we are not going to use any kind of measures, any kind of standards, so that's gonna hinder our growth. So that's become like politicized. So there is that issue there, and then the approach is still quite prevalent in here, particularly North America. Europe is a different thing. Because Europe has this technology assessments and doing measures and standards. They are a bit more precocious, but now in here it's a bit reactionary. And yeah, I think we should change that attitude, but I don't know how. So yeah.
Do you want to comment on it?
More like,
Okay.
I do, but I want to.
You want to comment on this topic, or is it?
I mean, I'm like 6 back at this point.
So I just wanted to foot stomp the software licensing thing, like not only is it BSD and IT. But like a Microsoft or an Apple license will also say no warranty or fitness for purchase or merchantability or whatever, like it's like, yeah, we don't do warranties in software, like if they just don't exist.
It would break Godspeed.
Yeah, and you might have a thing called an SLA, which is an insurance policy that I, the vendor, would sell you against me, which is also, beautiful.
The fact that you can make money coming and going on this is magic.
Yeah.
It's really this.
Not like good rates pay us, but we'll fix it harder.
Yeah. But I wanted to raise something, or just putting up the remark about the philosophy. It just sort of seems like there is like a problem with semantics, like just the meanings of words. I mean, we use the word technology as a metonym for computer crap to start off with. And it's like, it's not the technology, it's the information. There's a whole bunch of other technologies that nothing, I mean, notwithstanding the fact that we typically use computers, which is why going into biology or stuff like that. It is, so we're using this, we sort of, we've taken the framing of hook, line, and sinker of technology as computer crap, which entails stuff to do with information. And it's sort of like, if I have information about you that you don't have about me, then I can like do an end run around you to, it's going back to the sort of data, the matter of data. And so that is problematic, just, the fact that we're using the term AI to refer to like something at the very, very end of a very long chain of things. So, 1956, you've got, McCarthy invents the term artificial intelligence to sell a paper. It goes up this, deterministic path where you've got all sorts of technologies. It's not a technology, it's just a technological goal. You've got a deterministic path where that all died off in the 80s and the 90s or whatever. And then you got the statistical one, which started with the perceptron in 58 or whatever. And however many generations later, now you've got large language models. And the products of companies are the things that are being sold as AI. So but there's this entire genealogy of other stuff that some of it works better than it doesn't. And then you have these conversations about like, oh, well, should we use AI for, radiology? Well, that's not this thing. That's like something that's like 4 notches up, right? But like the language is just smushed and flattened and intentionally muddied through copious marketing. And so, it's like, I think like, perhaps would it make sense if, when we're like gonna have a conversation about it, well, you gotta like sit down and go, okay, what do we actually mean? Right? What do we mean by these words? Because, there are so many things that we could refer to.
Yeah. But there's no humility to do that. This is why I'm telling you, these conversations are wild. Like you go listen to people talk about AI, I told people, you can go on a river and say anything you want. And that's where we're drafting laws. Like it's completely, and it's so crazy because it's both happening. And it's crazy, but it's happening. Like it's like it matters because it's materially occurring, like it's really happening, it's happening in the world. But if you try to participate in it from a grounded perspective, that's not the way the conversation's organized. It's not organized by use. It's generally not. It's standards based. So one more thing about philosophy. I only touched Western philosophy because people started to say the machine is thinking and it's conscious, and I was like, okay, sorry, like what is going on? So you go back to Western philosophy, and I mean, we already figured this is like 100 years old problem of knowing that like the only reason a lot of science works is because we rounded off the stuff we don't understand.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to be able to talk about to be, which would be living in an era where like I read some of the older thinkers, they were so doubtful. They were publicly doubtful. They weren't, we have artificial intelligence, like these are the people winning a Nobel Prize. They were not that. That was not the culture of people who were inquisitive or curious or public intellectuals. It was like, shit, like that was more what it looked like from very thoughtful people. So that's where I don't know how we get into like curiosity, ethics, consciousness. We live in such a techno-rationalist society that when you try to talk about feelings and morals and values, it's like, well, is this religion? It's like, no, but it doesn't have to be religion to have to talk about it. So this is where I get a bit stuck, is like just to think about the flatness. For someone to think that a computer can have the experience of a human being, I don't know what to say anymore. But this is probably a view some of you hold, and I don't mean to say it like a jerk, but like, I don't even know how to square that with my experience. So I think we're at a bigger problem than just language around AI. Like, I think we've got a macro problem about how we converse and talk, and I'm sorry I cut you off because I was so, wait, yeah.
There's a large queue, but I'm okay to figure out who wants to build versus who wants to thread.
Build.
Build?
Yes.
Okay,
So
so you wanna build?
No, I just want to add to that.
Okay, so we'll just come build, that's a build then.
So on the topic of tooling, right? So when we talk about the idea of liability. So for example, you go to a store, you buy a hammer. There's really no liability about how you're going to use that hammer. But if the hammerhead falls off and you injure someone as a result of the negligence of the manufacturer, there is some form of liability to their maybe sort of kind of, figure it out. But when it comes to software tooling, the way I like to think about technology in terms of how we can segment it into easier ways to think about it is technology as like a tool set. So for example, and LLMs and all of the different types of LLMs are tool sets that you can use to build something else. Another way, or like the whole crypto phase, blockchain was a tool set that you could use, right? And then there's the idea of a platform. So all of our stuff is on phones or either on the Apple platform or the Google platform, and maybe some of you are on some niche something somewhere. But you are on a platform and the things get built on top of the platform and there's control over what happens there. So when you're thinking about like regulations, are you regulating the tool set, which could be like basically literally anything? You're regulating the platform, which is controlled by probably a large conglomerate or maybe a federated instance or federated consortium of instances, or are you talking about a single product with a single purpose? Right? The product is something that you go out and buy, but it's not necessarily, it could be branded as AI, but it's not AI, right? It's AI to do radiology assessment or something like that. So I think like having that kind of language helps shape the different tiers what we're thinking of.
Yeah.
So just for the sake of those waiting, why don't we go to 2? So we'll go Ned, and go yourself, and then see what forms, and then you can go after them too. And then we also have a question. Don't scratch your heads, Ned. This time. And then yeah, so we'll go 6, 7. Yeah, so Ned.
Okay, so I have a quick question and then a comment. So you mentioned the lack of status, right, is my old colleague. So are you using his strategic and logic design as a part of the technology assessment or just?
And Sophia is one of my courses. Yeah, it's a framework. The entire framework is based on this activity.
Okay, okay. Yeah. But Logo Sophia, I think I like something that doesn't understand its own technology. Well, because it's not his, but that's a longer story. So good luck.
Yeah.
I've used Logo Sophia many times. And,
I would like to transform it actually. Logo Sophia as my testing, but then I would want to use it a bit more.
I want to get in touch with Yanis. From
Yes,
Cyprus.
yeah,
Section,
yeah.
for advanced.
Jeff also.
Yeah, well, Jeff, yeah.
Jeff and Jenny, yeah.
Thanks. First funny story. Well, to add to your historical references, I don't know whether it's still on YouTube, but there was this video with an interview with von Förster, who is attributed to be the originator of the second order of cybernetics. It was probably still like black and white, so probably 60s. Where he was really ridiculing the whole idea that machines can think because it's just simply inherently impossible. And then whatever, 50, 60, 70 years later, we start having the discussion. But funny story, when I was doing my MRP, is the major research project, which is some of the people here are doing that now. I got bored with policy design, realizing it's neither policy nor design. And I wanted to do AI policy. 2017. And everyone told me it's like, well, it's interesting, but you're not going to get a job because no one really cares about AI policy. There's no future, maybe in 20, 30 years. And it's good that I didn't do that because, like, I understand policy a bit differently than maybe, most people would refer to. I did then platforms, and no one read the book that I wrote because I wanted to say platforms are not digital platforms fully. But to go back to words and semantics, well, maybe both of you, but we throw words like policy, governance, regulation, and they are rather different.
Yeah.
The guy who actually invented the methodology, Hassan Osman, was making the difference between policy, regulatory frameworks, and budgets and everything else. So I think that maybe the issue with this whole conversation, but not only here, broader than this, is that we are talking about regulating something, putting it in law, having all this kind of nitty-gritty stuff, and actually discussing the AI or tech policy, which is cultural, which is philosophical, which is based on values, which is, but even here in Canada, even when government talks about stuff, they say policy, they mean a law. Policy is not a law. Policy exists even if there's no law or if there's no budget. So maybe just a comment on this kind of going back again to the words and semantics, does that affect our, arguing confusion as Hassan?
So before you answer that, let's get a technical question in. So hold that thought about the language of law and how that affects and shapes the response to it. So we'll get question number 5.
Okay. So I want to go back to your thread of moral urgency and authoritarianism, and explore something even potentially darker. And of course, it depends on how good you think the technology will get. But like some of the downsides are, let's say, cognitive decline amongst us, polarization, fake news, all of that. Authoritarianism through surveillance is another one. If AI gets really good, there are going to be job losses because of the automation that entails. People keep spotting UBI as a solution for that.
Yeah.
Right. But in parallel, we also have robotics getting really, really good, right? And now, if we just had AI, but we didn't have robotics, you people would still be needed for physical labor, right?
Yeah.
And you need to keep them happy or at least fed some way to keep the economy going, otherwise the world collapses. Robotics gets good enough, we become dispensable, right? So I see a very plausible dark path over here where UBI, if it comes to be realized at all, is only for a short time window where robotics can scale up wide enough to say, like, let these people starve, we don't need to feed them, right? And that is a real possible path to hundreds of millions of people just starving. And the reason there's incentive to do that is because we are in an ecological crisis and we are in overshoot, right? We cannot sustain this level of lifestyle for these number of people. So I believe there is real incentive for people to go over there. And I don't see how we avoid that path unless there is a power flip very soon in forms of something like citizens' assemblies taking power in wide, like across massive number of democracies simultaneously, or like in a short period of time. Because that is the only way for us to kind of start regulating some of these things and ensuring that the common citizen is protected. Otherwise, like I think just the math of the ecological crisis and the economics of automation will ensure that it's more profitable to people out.
Yeah. So, and I think the way these two things go together too, is that like, for me, the scarcity in our economy, and you think if you're disabled, if you can't work, you're already starving right now. You can't get a home. So we're already doing this if you can't work. That's the entry ticket permission in our society, in Canada, in our big moral, ethical nation. So and I always go back to this thing with the scarcity is what makes so much of this stuff dangerous. Because if you add your basic function and access to housing, food, enough to live, have a discriminatory, it's like, is that landlord bad and discriminating against you with an app? Yes, and there's also 9 other places, so you know what up? Like, I think this is where I get nervous of it. I feel like it's convenient to try to regulate to try to address whether policy, regulation, standards, safety, blah, 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 in the technology, when the actual cause for needing all of this is over here and it has nothing to do with technology. So, and I agree with you, I think like this is the mounting, like this might be the rising moment, and I do think labor, this is why with Canada, it's an unfortunate place. Like private sector unions are a bit more organized than public sector, but that's where that power right now is the most, it's the most concentrated. But our unions haven't fought like that. Like for this kind of fight, they join fights, they get into moral fights, they get into ethical fights, but this is actually fighting to have it, the kind of society where you're valued and you have dignity, whether you can work or not. And I think the UBI stuff scares me because we don't do it well now. So whatever that minimum threshold would be, because of all the automation, people would be dying anyway, because we're doing it now, right? So I agree with you. I will say that I believe deeply in diversity of tactics. And I think that's part of why I'm curious for the systems people as well. And I think about disability, we talked about this briefly. I don't think there's one universal thing or tactic that is gonna bring us to a more active democracy. I think it's a little bit of what works here, what works there. Like it's, this is emergent strategy. Anyone familiar with Adrienne Marie Brown, unpack chronology? But this is like, everybody kind of responds as best they can from where they are. And we don't try to build these national coalition, like so much labor goes into trying to check, are you doing what I'm doing? How does it scale? When someone asks me, how does it scale? I'm like, stay away from me. That's like, that is a lot of what we have to deal with right now. It doesn't scale. I don't think it scales. So this is my thoughts on these two things. Like, I'm not saying we can't I use technology. I tell people, use the technology. You want to use your thing, you get Grammarly, you get a better fine. These are kind of like up here, a little bit luxury concern to try to do it on the consumer basis. Like it's like the climate crisis. Like you can't take it on a personal level, right? So I think we have to be careful that we don't get off the guy. See, I use Twitter a lot. I got off it because whatever, it's not, like, to me, it's not a big moral move. Like, oh, I'm not on Twitter, because like, okay, great, like, fine, but it's not like, oh, you're on Twitter, you're a Nazi. Like, no, I don't agree with that, because I don't actually think that is the major source of harm in terms of where, like, we need to participate. So I think this comes back to self-reflection. Where are we practicing our politics? Are we doing the easy ones that make us feel good about our choices? But that's not gonna feed someone who's disabled and can't work in the very city in which you live, So I'm trying to figure out how we reorient these things, but not make it, what do you call it when it's like, it's like, oh, you can't care about this because it has to be that. Like, I don't think it's that.
Not binary.
It's not binary, but like holding these truths at the same time and working on them concurrently, which Western brains are terrible at doing, because I always tell people, white supremacy, we pay a lot of attention to the white. The supremacy is a big problem in white supremacy. It's a hierarchical. It's the opposite of pluralism and holding multiple truths at once. So this is where I think we have like real even in discourse problems to talk, because it's like, oh, I'm right, you're wrong, you're right, I'm wrong, we're polarized. I don't think so. I read a nice thing from Nietzsche recently, the practice of passing by. Has anyone heard about this before? Sometimes you just don't touch the thing. Because you're not gonna get to a new moral imagination if you keep sparring with the thing in a closed circuit of rhetoric, right? You just don't make a space for yourself to go somewhere else. So I hope the systems people have better ideas for getting somewhere else, because it's not coming from the tech governance crowd, I can tell you that.
Okay, so we have, then Zach will be added, so yourself, and then Jenya, and then we'll have yourself, and then Zach. And then Pac-Man, you wanna get in on that too, I see something brewing, maybe, okay, we'll come back.
There's been so many conversations that I've been.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just stirring the soup, so
Yes. I didn't know keep it fairly general, so I come from a policy background, and then when I hear people talk about policy at tech governance crowd, it kind of irks me a little bit, because back to the point of like definitions, like there's a lot of like navigate, and I think it's like very, it's almost like a mirror to how policy people are just very bad with the tech lingo, and how we talk about concepts is the same, you know, on the other side of the policy. I think, like, you know, we talk about like regulations, like technical standards, all these things are just policy instruments. Policy can be as broad as, and often is, in the government sector, it's all blue, like it's everything that we do. It's direction setting, it's coming up with strategies, the high level pillars and the charters, and then getting down to the nitty gritty of like technical standards, you can get back to that level. And the most formalized way of, and the most enforceable is like the laws, the statutes, and regulations. But then there's also kind of softer other things that are, you know, things that like nudge and incentivize things in a certain direction. The other kind of like point that I want to make about this is like, when we talk about tech policy, the way that government sees it is in a very specific kind of way. It's like, things to do with like data, and maybe it's like the way that we think about tech, like, you know, it's in a very like, scoped way. Whereas the way we think about policy is so broad, so, and all these other like social problems that we're talking about really just come on policy. So if, you know, we want to contribute in a meaningful way, with, you know, what we know about technology and tech governance and how it impacts a specific sector or society. One of the most effective ways to do that is just participating in regular policy consultation that has nothing to do with tech.
Yes. Yeah, strong here.
Jenya?
It was just more at the moment, now I feel like there's the conversation, the soup went so many different ways and kind of lost its punch, but I'm still gonna say. So I just want to also mirror like what kind of resonated with me, what you said. So you said culture, and then how we use AI. The use is very important, and then that's our only agency in impacting it. And then we also, and then for that, I just wanted to give an example. So I'm Korean by blood, 100%, but I was born in from the Soviet Union when it was from the Soviet Union. And then I left to study in the United States. And I came, and within, I actually still surprised that nobody wrote a book about it. Because within 2.5, definitely up to 5 years, 2.5, it was very fast, 2.5 to 4. So when you immigrate, you hold on to your values. When you inside the change, you adjust and react and you survive. So when you come back and you observe, what I observed was the values changed 180 degrees within 2.5 years. 70 years of instilling certain values, 2.5 years gone. Yes, the whole social economic fabric of society, culture, values, transform like this. So AI has this impact, has this power of this impact. And I agree that nobody's having conversations beyond here. We're over here. But we don't even know where it's leading us, right? But the conversation has to be over here. The system, how it's impacting the system, the social economic fabric, the value, the culture, therefore the values, therefore the ethics. And another example of that is, again, I come from a different culture. I came here to spend many years over, I'm not gonna mention how many years. And then now, from my perspective, because again, I'm holding on to my values, I'm like, where did embellishment became selling, became lying, and now it's a norm?
Yes, yes, yes,
Lying is a norm.
yes.
And with AI, lying is our today's reality, and if you're not lying, you're not surviving in this market.
Yes.
So my question is, it's a hypothetical question. These conversations about culture and these conversations about where's our agency, where do we have them? And because agency is a very, again, hard thing to have. You can have an opinion, but where do you join the others to have the conversation and to actually move anything, like move a pendulum a little bit or a lot?
Yeah.
So it's a hypothetical question, but it's something for us to think about. Because when the shift will happen, it will happen very quickly. That would have been already true.
Yeah.
People keep
I'm
getting.
gonna do a time check, because it's 8 o'clock,
It's 8 o'clock.
traditionally we end at 8:15, so.
Yeah.
You might,
Yeah. Depends a little bit.
8:20.
Yeah.
So yourself, Hakon, with your hand up as well.
So I just want to add to that, I think there is no incentive for sustained cognitive dissonance right now. I think that's where
Yeah.
curiosity, invention, everything happens in that, right? And that is slowly taken away.
Yeah.
And what I've observed over the last so many years is that every single technology advancement or any kind of unicorn or whatever you want to call it, is essentially trying to capitalize on one of the 7 deadly sins. Right? I mean, if you think about it, that's essentially what it is. And there's a reason why it is, because we don't notice it and we want it, though it's the culture and social and moral aspects that is stopping us from doing it. And they are trying to make it easy. And I don't know what's the way to get out of it. The other thing was, it's the Jovan's paradox. I don't know how many of you have heard of it. So it's a simple thing would be that when plastics were created at scale, we were all getting worried that plastic is going to spoil the ocean and whatnot. And this was a problem that's been there for 50 years. But the way we quelled that problem was essentially saying that plastic is recyclable.
Yeah.
So that was essentially something to make us quiet. Oh, if it's recyclable, then there is no problem in using it. And that's when it skyrocketed, the use of plastic. Because we felt that, oh, it's no longer a problem. And I'm pretty sure a similar thing will come for AI. But right now the problem is, oh, you know what, water is scarce, electricity is being used and all that. And then suddenly NVIDIA comes up with a new chip which takes 1/100 of the electricity. And they say, oh, we can now use ocean water and we don't need fresh water. And suddenly everything will become normal. And then we'll start using it even more. And that is when the change will kick in. And I think we need to see that is going to happen. I know that it's going to happen. And it will go through us and you won't even notice it. And what can we do about it, right?
Yeah.
And one small thing when you're saying culture, right? Rather than calling it artificial intelligence, I think we should start calling it alien intelligence, because that's what it is. We have no understanding of how that works. It's not the way we have built our intelligence. So if we maybe start calling it AI as alien intelligence, maybe there'll be some level of fear that comes in. Maybe, I don't know, just one of the many ways to look at it.
Just keep it to like, because we're winding down now, so see.
So, this is actually a kind of a repeat of something we discussed at a previous meeting that was on like urban planning and stuff like that. And basically speaking to what you said and your work, how do you raise awareness of political issues or like technology so that, you know, the citizens can assemble to prevent that, you know, scary future of having people dispose of, or like in your case, make decisions on like technology on a policy level. So like, I personally, I'm not very politically informed. I wish I was more, but like, there's no like one app I can go to that will list, oh, these are, you know, the policies that each platform wants to make or whatever, or like, these are what they're thinking. And I'm posing the question of, does anyone have any thoughts on how to raise political awareness in the average citizen?
Yeah, I think it
Quick answers to.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like two things. One, my friends that work in cities have said the good applications of AR toward like infrastructural efficiencies. So I think having this like really stark line between maximizing benefit, and I totally agree, 'cause they're gonna figure out the energy problem, like all of this is gonna come. And separating that from the cultural consumer, the individual piece is like one another like divide for how we can say, no, we can use science and math and whatever to our shared benefit in an urban or rural or wherever thing. But this thing about the, this comes back to one of the, I don't think we should do public consultation on AI, but the benefit of it is that you meet each other and you're all, because it is so, it gives you so much power when you're in a room with people, you're like, this, they're like, this does suck, doesn't it? Yes, this is hell, isn't it? Yes. Because so many people carry that in their mind, but they're scared to say it. And this is why the hype has been so powerful, is because leaders don't want to look stupid. Businesses, this fear of missing out has captured everything. And it's this again, you feel crazy saying this is so powerful. It's actually doing the thing that no one wants to. So this is what I think the benefit of assembly is. It's more of the mechanics of getting people in the room together, but not worrying about coordinating too much. Because I think you keep flipping it like more locally, because that's where you can have conversations like this, where you see people who have the same feeling, and then your confidence grows. Because I think a lot of people are scared to talk or to be the Luddite or the whatever, you know, there's a whole thing around that. So I don't know, those are my.
So pack on and then last one at the back.
Can I respond?
Let's go through that. There's time, and afterwards we can chat. Yeah.
I'll have a quick response after.
Okay.
Whoever wanna say, yeah, it's okay, I'll, yeah. There.
So we'll get these two in and then we'll.
Yes, I feel stressed so much, like, but I think it's something about, it's like, so then you mentioned like this reactive mode versus proactive. I think you're kind of holding the proactive up higher, which I agree with. Is there something about, sensing and our intuitions that kind of came up with like the grossness, a lot of people feel a moral urgency, which is like a sensing is very highly integrated. And then also, you know, you mentioned, Adrian Brown versus strategy and tangent. And I guess it's like, yeah, I guess like this idea that reactive is like a bad thing, I think speaks to an imbalance, but also maybe to a way that we don't have ways to move back soon enough and allow us to express like the things that I think we feel. And like when you described like the situation in Russia, I imagine there's a lot of feeling of dissonance in the culture that was captured and stuck. And like as soon as there was a release, people did what they knew was right because they could. And we basically like that, we have this capacity to like, I guess sometimes I think a lot of us feel that we're broken or that like we're fucked up. But like, it's like, I guess I feel like we are no more or less broken than we have ever been in the history of all time. Like we arrive with these senses that are like evolved and attuned to navigate like complexity and the unknown that we kind of slide on as biases, but they're actually really dialed in. And like, I guess it's like, I wonder what we could do if we could kind of have feedback loops that allow like our sense of disgust or moral indignance to like actually be reflected more tightly. And to like truly allow our attention to move, like Adrian Brown says, what we put our attention on grows. Like if we look at money, the world is made of money. If we look at power, the world is made of power. If we look at licenses, the world is made of licenses. And I think it's none of these are true. There's no view from the outside in where one thing is true. It's like all the things are true in different ways and they're interacting. And I do, yeah, I guess I just wonder if we had more ability just to allow these things that I think are like, we're blessed with. They're like gifts to sense these things, feel surprised, to feel outraged, to feel moral, disgust. I'm not sure where I'm going, I don't know.
Yeah, it's great.
It's great, but like,
Great.
I feel hopeful.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's, the container we're in that's broken, we are not broken.
Yeah. It's good.
Thank you, Pat. And yourself?
Two quick things. One, AI, particularly general AI, is alchemy.
Is what?
Is alchemy.
Alchemy, yeah.
That's exactly not the alchemy.
Yeah.
In historical terms. The other thing is, if we want a hook to have the general public interested in this, actually more IT in general, spam and scams.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
gets hit with spam.
Yeah.
And we have the history of how that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
So beautiful, thank you for sharing that.
So like, did you want to say one thing?
Yeah, I'll just quickly respond to what you were saying about the political well, because this political well, like how we actually involve, how do we actually make politicians aware of this? It's actually is happening already. I think that people, when they are actually scared of something, they actually are aware of the new technology's impact and they are already scared of it. Then when people already want to involve in it, there is a political will already. I think like when I was doing this process prototyping, I engaged with people from 4 provinces and 70 of them involved in it. And 96% of them, they actually want to involve in that process. So the process just needs to be in there. So the will is there. So that's from people's side. And when we are actually thinking from the business perspective, they actually want people to be involved. So that's also another thing that it might probably hinder their productivity. But then from the business side also is that when people are scared, they're not going to use that new technology. And when they're not using that new technology, they are going to not make money. So they are also somehow scared. They are also somehow stuck. So they want people actually to be involved in somehow. So there is that thing ongoing. Business also wants it. People also want it. The thing is we don't have anything yet to actually make it actually happen. So that is.
I think one thing.
Yes, yes, you may.
Thank you. The thing I wanna say is that the danger of all, and I put this on everything, policy, regulation, standards, is that to me, it's like, if 10% of what is termed machine learning, artificial intelligence, whatever is deemed risky or needs to be regulated or whatever, and it is regulated. And all this other stuff isn't, it normalizes, it's a like, look away from the mass use and look over here. And then once it's had a massive cultural impact, you have a problem because you look, you say, oh, it's regulated. It's safe, it's not harming anyone, what's your problem? And then the thing is, it's passed. So that's the point when I keep like I know I sound like I'm really negative on those things, but it's not because that they don't serve a purpose. Same with warranty of like it should be for this class of stuff. But I'm more concerned about all the stuff that's already in classrooms, already getting kids coming home and saying, I just will end with the anecdote. A parent said their child came home, they were reading a book, and the teacher said, put the prompt into ChatGPT to have it draw the secret garden. And the parent said to them, why don't you draw the secret garden? And the little girl says, it won't be as good. That scares the shit out of me, and that is not a legal problem. Do you understand, like, what I'm trying to say when I say culture? That gives my body, like, that makes me fucking sad. You know what I mean? And that's not a regulatory problem. So I'll end with that emphatic, like, this is why I'm fired up about not dealing with it too much on the technocratic frame, because we're gonna miss the thing that is exactly the flip, and then you got a problem. So what to do about it, I don't know, but I think talking like this is part of it, and thank you all for the conversation.
So I want to close it in a little bit of a different way than usual. Dan, I'm going to put you on the spot. Because Dan was our discussant in the last session.
Nice.
So it might be nice to bring your voice to close the next discussion. And if either you are available at the January discussion, you can do the same in that. But Dan also is a historian. And the time came, a conversation came up about history and et cetera. So Dan, I want to put you on the spot if you're a game for this. Maybe you could take just a minute or two. What are your reflections on this discussion as it relates to your knowledge and expertise on a civilizational unit of analysis where previous civilizations have encountered these types of issues? What do you have to offer this audience?
I mean, with that historical and complex and science lens, I have done a little bit of work on the evolution and impacts of technology developments in the past a little bit, and so I've been bringing that to this past conversation, so much. But I do think that, what this shows is sort of common, no matter if it's, invention of cavalry warfare or iron metallurgy or whatever. It is always this sort of process, right, needing to distill and distinguish the different elements, right? There's the use, there's the specific use, there's the state or the economic or the interests that are then, guiding the processes of creating and employing that technology for what, if there were, if there agricultural, good as that, whatever. And then there's the regulatory environment that builds up after the fact, always reactive, kind of has to be reactive, you know, framework for regulating something that doesn't exist and no one knows about or cares about. But it is based on the sort of principles and I think the generic policy of, you know, establishing a specific regulation based on your own general policy, and then that is. So there's all these different levels, and you have to separate them and distinguish them, because otherwise it's too intractable. But then they interact, that's really the key, and then they interact on different timescales. And I guess where I land in all this isn't necessarily a solution, but I think, you're gonna come back to more diversity of approach or diversity of activity. That is the only thing that matters, because there are different elements that act on different scales and at different time lines. And so you can't have one thing that gets that all at once, that's impossible. And so it is this kind of conversation, even though it's a little bit viewed, it has to be the process, it has to be a little bit of everything all at once. To then build a cultural sea change that can then allow for a policy environment that can then allow for reframing of specific laws and guidelines and boundaries on specific things and things back and forth. So to me, the fact that we're having this conversation is very productive. And this is, you know, it's a process, and technology is always scary, and it always seems like it's really confined. They said the same thing about TV, and we said about video games, and they said the same thing about different kinds of books, and about, you know, reading the Bible in German instead of Latin is what's ruining everybody. We're all gonna go to hell. Even though that happened, we're not sure, but always, right? So these are common refrains, and to me, that gives a little sense of, okay, yes, it sounds scary. We have been under these kind of scary moments before and survived. And we're in a scary moment now, and we will survive. There are paths. That's my hopeful story.
Yes. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone, for this session. Next month, we're gonna take a break, so there won't be a session. But we'll pick things up in January, and if you follow us, you can sign up. There's like a Google group as well, or you can hear about it. You can chat with myself or David. And we'll also start to expand in the new year. At some point in 2026, we're also gonna start to ideate on systems outings, going out into the world. It's kind of like field trips. That's not necessarily gonna be System Ontario. This is much more grassroots, or like I don't want to mess with it. But you can be expected to hear about that sometime in the new year as well. So thank you very much. That's a wrap for 2025. Thank you all for being here.
Okay, so what we usually do after, for people who want to join us, we usually go to a restaurant that doesn't close at 10 o'clock and have dinner. Will you join us?
I will join for a little bit. My daughter was having a rough time, so
Okay.
I said I wouldn't be home late.
So Lynn?
Yeah.
You joining us? Okay, so then is it the German kebab place or Vietnamese?
Always Vietnamese.
Vietnamese. Yeah, okay, a quick show of hands, I just want to know how many people are actually interested in going. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so it is actually just across streets on Queen Street, so we just go north and it's right there.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.